Today, I'm going to talk about the top 10 trout magnet trout fishing mistakes that you need to avoid. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, the trout magnet is one of my favorite go-to baits when it comes to trout fishing, whether wild trout or stock trout. But with the trout magnet kit, you can also catch panfish, you can catch bass, you can catch a lot of trout on these things, but also crappie and other species of fish. When it comes to trout fishing with the trout magnet, there's definitely certain things that you need to do to be successful, but there's also things that you need to avoid to make really bad mistakes and have a really bad day of fishing. So today, we're going to go through the top 10 mistakes that you need to avoid with the trout magnet, and we're starting out the list at number 10. Now, starting out the list at number 10 is not watching your bobber. Now, that sounds really simple, but in fact, not watching your bobber can cost you some bites and some takedowns and some fish in the net. A lot of times with the trout magnet, the trout are going to bite really subtle, so any just subtle movements with your bobber, that's when you should be setting the hook. Now, it shouldn't matter if you're drift fishing, jigging, or you're fishing a trout magnet underneath a bobber, any little movement, you should be thinking it's a fish and setting the hook. And if you're not paying attention very closely, you could lose out on that fish pretty easily. And when fishing the trout magnet, you should have pretty light line. I like to go with a 6-pound mono leader, and then my main line is 10-pound braid because it has more sensitivity and you'll be able to feel the fish a lot easier when you're fishing with the trout magnet. So pay close attention when you're bobber fishing with the trout magnet because any subtle movement, set the hook. Now, coming in at mistake number 9 is picking and choosing the wrong color. And the trout magnet comes in all kinds of colors. We've got the neon kit, and you got the 152-piece kits. You can get about every single color of the trout magnet. The easiest way to go in and pick your color is probably to pick something like really flashy, really colorful, like orange and yellow and pink, just anything super bright. But not all fish and not all trout, even stock trout, really want those bright baits. Sometimes with the trout magnet, I found that the more subtle, more natural colors actually fish better. And this is where if you're fishing a body of water, whether it's your home water or somewhere new, you can easily make the mistake of picking the wrong colors. So when I'm out trout fishing, the first thing I do, whether it's stock trout or wild trout, is to pick something a little bit more natural. So brown, black, white, red, even green, those are going to be my go-tos first, and even brown as well. And then from there, I'll venture out. But if I'm also just fishing a place that's truly stock trout, that doesn't mean you got to fish just the bright baits all the time. Sometimes the more natural baits actually do better. Because remember, with stock trout at hatcheries, they're getting fed brown pellets. So that's why I love brown. Even I love black colors because, again, they match the food that the trout are feeding on, and you're just going to get a lot more bites sometimes fishing with those colors. Different colors will work differently on these trout. So pay attention to the details and make sure you're picking the right colors for the right situation, because it's very easy to pick the wrong color. Now, coming into mistake number 8 is not fishing all the techniques that you can with the trout magnet. Now, the 3 common that I like to fish with is fishing the trout magnet underneath the bobber. There's a straight up just jigging the trout magnet underneath, say, the boat, or just jigging from the bank and bringing it back to you. Or if you got a little bit of flow like in a creek or stream, is side drifting that down the river, maybe with a little bit of split shots with drags on the bottom. Or if you just want to fish it naked, which I call natural, and just let it float along in the river, the creek, the bed, little stream that you're fishing. And again, every body of water is going to be a little bit different, but don't just stick to one technique when it comes to trout magnet trout fishing. Yes, I love bobber fishing with the trout magnet. It's my go-to, but sometimes I get stuck on that a little bit too much, and I could be fishing some of the other techniques to help me catch these trout. So when you're out there with the trout magnet, try a couple of different techniques, swap out your colors, and you should be able to find what those trout are looking for and what they're going to bite the easiest. And especially when it comes to float fishing, if that float and your jig haven't moved in 20 minutes, that's not patience, that's just straight up fishing denial. Now, coming into mistake number 7 is not adding scent to your trout magnet. Now, I've said this in multiple other videos before, scent is a big deal when it comes to trout, and when it comes to the trout magnet in particular, adding some scent could be the ultimate game changer. And this is one of the best things that you can do with fishing with your trout magnet. Yeah, you may catch some fish without some scent, but just adding in a little bit of scent to those trout magnets, that bait will be irresistible to the trout. We're talking about corn, nightcrawler, and garlic, especially in the summertime. Those are some of my favorite scents and flavors. Add just a little bit to that trout magnet so you got motion, you got scent, you got a little grubby bait that's right in the strike zone. No trout is ever going to resist that combination. So make sure if you're going to go trout fishing with the trout magnet, you got some extra scents with you, but don't overdo it. As my mentor says, do you want a hot dog? Yes. Do you want a whole bottle of ketchup on your hot dog? No, you only want a little bit on your hot dog. Well, at least if you're under 8 years old. be very mindful and just put a little bit of scent because it can go a long way, and that might just be the right ticket to help you catch a bunch of trout. Now, coming in at mistake number 6 is too long of leader. And I've been guilty of this a lot when it comes to trout magnet trout fishing, because a lot of times I'll start out and I'll make my first couple casts with really long leaders. See if those trout are deeper, or just trying to figure out the depth of the water that I'm fishing. And a lot of times what I'll end up finding out is that I'm fishing a little bit too deep. So this is where having a slip bobber is great to be able to adjust your depth. But a lot of times when we're fishing for trout, even like say from the boat or just the bank in general, sometimes our leaders are just too freaking long. So shorten them up. And maybe the better piece of advice is start out with a shorter leader and then make it bigger and bigger as you make a few casts, as you're kind of fanning your cast out right, left, center, farther, middle, shorter. Change your depths ups as well, because that's where you're gonna be able to figure out where the trout are at, be able to catch them. Because remember, trout look up, they don't look down. So if you got a really long leader, you could be having that bait underneath all the fish versus a little bit above them where they can be looking up to go strike that bait. Now, coming in at mistake number 5 is having too big of a bobber or an indicator when fishing with the trout magnet. And here's the reason why this is a big mistake, because one of the things with trout is they like to bite the trout magnet kind of soft sometimes, but with a bigger bobber, you got a little bit more weight and tension against when the trout is pulling on it. And that could be a recipe where they feel that tension and that extra weight, and they just drop that trout magnet out of their mouth. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Again, that extra float has a little bit more resistance when coming through the water. So you want to go as small of an indicator or a float as possible to have it as light as possible, make really nice casts with it, and have less resistance for the fish when they bite it. And with the 152 piece kit, these come with some bobbers or indicators already. They're great to use and they're small and nice and light. So if you want to start out with something easy that has everything in it, from the jig heads, the bobbers, and all the grubs and trout magnets, get one of the kits because it'll have everything that you need to be set up to go catch some trout. Now, mistake number 4 is not having motion or having your trout magnet move in the water. One of the biggest advantages to the trout magnet, it has the tails at the end, which give off some movement and wiggle in the water. But if you got no windy day, if you're just sitting there and the trout magnet's not moving, it's not really doing you a lot of favor. You want some motion with the trout magnet to maximize its potential. So if you're fishing a little creek or stream, you got some movement of the water, that's great. If you're fishing on a pond, move that bobber in every so often, just, slightly bring it to you, like nice light reel, get some movement on there. Your best friend is actually a little bit of wind to move that bobber and move the trout magnet underneath it, which is perfect, but not all fishing situations are that. So if you're having a calm day, if you're not having some motion, I highly recommend making some motion, and then you'll start to see more fish be interested. Your percentage of bites, hookups, and land ratio in the net are going to go up. And for all the guys and gals out there who don't like the trout magnet or don't think it catches fish, well, I think it's because you fish the trout magnet like a spinnerbait. The coming in mistake number 4 is not changing colors more frequently. Now, I'm very guilty of this at times where I'll stick to one color and not give up because I think it's gonna work and it just isn't. And I just sit there making cast after cast after cast and it's just not working. So don't get in a rut or don't get in the mindset you gotta stick to one color. Make 3, 4, 5 casts, and with the trout magnet, again, it's very easy to swap out colors from one to the other. So if you're not getting bit on one, try something else. Maybe go back to that one later. That's totally fine. It's very easy to swap things out and to change colors because, again, water conditions, water clarity, the weather is changing constantly throughout the day. So in the morning, one color might be better. In the mid-morning, another color might be good. So just don't stick with one color. If it's not working, try multiple colors over and over again. But if you've got a color that's working, you're catching a lot of fish, great. But if then all of a sudden the bite stops or shuts off, go away from that color and go try something else. Again, fish will be hot and cold and go on and off all the time. And that's your indication that if that's happening, to swap out your colors quickly. Now, coming in at mistake number 2 is fishing the trout magnet too fast. It's a little bit more of a subtle grub bait that you want to fish more slowly, not super slow, but slow-ish as you're fishing with it. So if you're bobber fishing, make it nice, gentle, as you're reeling back, make it nice and gentle. If you're fishing a little creek or stream, make sure it's a nice little movement. If you got water just rushing down the river and it's going fast, may not be the best bait to use. You want to be a little bit more subtle presentation, subtle bait, make your casts nice and easy, make those retrieves nice and subtle. You don't need to burn it back. This isn't bass fishing when you're using the trout magnet. Make it finessey, make it good, and you're gonna start to see more trout in the net. Well, we've gone through mistakes 10 through 2. Well, what is mistake number 1 when it comes to the trout magnet? And that is fishing the trout magnet as real bait. Now, in my home state, we have certain regulations of where you can fish bait on certain rivers. And in the regulations, it states that soft plastics are considered bait. So you have to be very careful about when you're fishing with the trout magnet, because if you make the mistake and fish with it on a river that doesn't allow bait certain times of the year, that could get you in a lot of trouble. So before you head out, check the regulations and make sure you can fish the trout magnet on the body of water that you are fishing, because some places it's considered a soft plastic and some places it's considered a bait, which is inclusive of soft plastics, and you're not allowed to fish it. There you guys have it, the top 10 trout magnet trout fishing mistakes. Hope you got some good information that you learned today that you won't make out on the water. And if you're looking for more trout magnet fishing content, I got a couple of videos right here that are perfect to help you get dialed in out on the water and help you catch more fish with the trout magnet. I'll see you guys on the next one. And as always, if you ain't losing gear, you ain't fishing.